Hey, welcome to Sound Test. My name is Bryan, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Warner Brothers Discovery. There's been some recent developments regarding the direction of the company, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. There's a lot of ties to that company that I had in terms of fandoms and characters and, just the healthiness of the company as a whole that I wanted to talk about. So, this is me, Bryan, talking a little bit about Warner Brothers Discovery as of 2024. So recently, in the last few years, once the merger of WB and Discovery kind of happened, the new CEO, Zaslav, been doing a lot of changes to the company, which most, including myself, find to be very negative. And I say this as a DC fan. I was a long time DC fan. Batman is just one of my favorite, superhero properties. I love the Bat family. I kind of love that he's just kind of a regular guy who's taking on these different roles and personas to try to bring justice to Gotham, and the type of villains that creates a lot of the philosophical things that those stories really create. I love that stuff, and just fan of old school WB. So we're talking like the Warner Brothers, stuff like Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera, a lot of those older stuff. And, that comes into the stuff like Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and, all those things that really made that identity, that feel for back in the day, And I loved going back and watching those things because it's kind of like comfort food in a lot of cases, where you're going back and watching those, reliving those old cartoons, and a lot of them still stay strong to this day. So their comedy was based on things that really was timeless. But as of late, once the merger happened with Discovery, a lot of things has changed in the company, and a lot of things for the worst. Obviously, we've heard a lot about canceled movies, canceled projects, canceled, TV shows, and a lot of it we've seen result in just tax write-offs for the company. Max, the streaming service, which was formerly HBO Max, which housed a lot of this Adult Swim content, Cartoon Network content, and then, a bunch of the DC either animated movies, TV shows. All of this was within that, that WB umbrella under HBO Max. They completely removed the HBO branding to it. It just became Max. And, they started taking stuff off that surface, stuff, original programming that you can't find elsewhere. Seemingly for no reason, they've taken all those things off. And what a lot of people believe the reason is for royalties, so they don't have to pay these actors and writers and producers the royalties that they were rightfully owed from creating this media. So once the merger happened, the company as a whole took up on a lot of debt, and seemingly a lot of the things that they were working on in terms of reducing the debt costs came directly from cutting several things from WB and projects and, like I said, shows and stuff like that, just to make the company leaner. So it just felt like this merger was done just to destroy WB, for lack of better terms. I want to talk about a few things in particular, kind of going with this idea that the company is kind of like falling apart. So I'm going to look at an article from Cracked. This is Warner Brothers Discovery orders Adult Swim to delist all of their video games. And, this is, again, why are we taking this legacy content away? Adult Swim game publishing, one, it was really weird for a network kind of company to get into game publishing, but a lot of their games were so unique. They really relied on these independent developers, these smaller developers, to make these projects, and a lot of these projects turned out to be really, really cool. Um, I'll read from this article. David Zaslav is tired of canceling completed projects before they're released. He's moving on to burying them years after the fact, probably in the backyard besides the universe's original Rick and Morty. Warner Bros. Discovery's efforts to slim down their massive and culturally defining catalog have been front-page entertainment news in the TV and movie industries for the past couple of years. Under Zaslav's reign, the media monolith has scrubbed the entire series from streaming, and highly anticipated efforts of Love, like the recently canned animated comedy film Coyote vs. Acme, never even made it to release date before Zaslav tosses them into the inescapable portal to the tax write-off dimension. Now Warner Bros. Discovery is coming for Adult Swim, starting with their video games. Over the last week, video game developers who's worked with Adult Swim on both original games and franchise tie-ins for shows like Rick and Morty have reportedly been contracted by Warner Bros. Discovery representatives, who's informed that the artists at their work will be delisted from all platforms and marketplaces within 60 days. Beginning in May, every Adult Swim game will be inaccessible for anyone who doesn't already own a copy. So basically, download Pocky Mortys when you still can. Adult Swim Games, the video game publishing branch of the animation giant, it kind of just goes on to, the history of WB games. But yeah, this is such a disappointment. Properties that are already made, out for release, and we're losing them. And this is kind of the harsh reality of digital media. You don't own that digital media. You own a license to it. And a company can just, at any moment, take that license away from you and say, this is no longer yours. Your purchase no longer matters. And, when we have things like this, where now these smaller developers are losing their, hard work, their catalog is essentially of what they've done and how they contributed to this smaller game space, is just taken away for seemingly no reason other than to stop paying people what they're owed. So from one of the games, Fist Puncher, by Team 2-Bit, they recorded saying, "We've asked that Warner Brothers simply transfer the game to our Steam publisher account so that they can stay active." But so far they said with no reason being that they made a universal decision not to transfer the games back to original studios and do not have the resources to do so. So even when developers are asking, hey, can our original games live on? The games that we've created, can we just keep the license? Can we pay for the license? And we're not getting that. They're denying those developers the right to get their original work and keep it alive somehow. And part of this goes with that idea of video game preservation. How can we preserve these games for years to come? How can we go back and say, oh, this was a fantastic game or a milestone game, when the powers that be delist these games and there's no physical media, there's no physical way to represent and play these games. So this is just like a harsh reality, is like, hey, some of these games are not going to be here forever. Regardless if you paid for it or not, some of these games are just not going to be here forever. And for developers, this is really scary, because a lot of independent developers and small scale developers have to rely on publishers. They have to rely on publishers to publish their content, make it widely available, and give them the funding to do so. And we're losing that with business decisions like this. I want to look at another one. This is articles from GameStop. Warner Brothers doubles down on live service games. This is from their Spot On segment with Lucy James and Tamor Hussein. Early this week, Warner Brothers Discovery Games boss J.B. Parrott announced that the company is adjusting its business strategy amidst the volatile console gaming space. How's it doing that, you ask? By increasing its library of live service, mobile, and free-to-play games. So it's a whole actual video that they did. But I wanted to get the main point of this, that they're doubling down on something that's not working for them. Like it doesn't make sense. So, you know, again, as I said, I was a Batman fan. I kind of like intentionally avoided Gotham Knights because, you know, I heard the reception of it, and I love the idea of Gotham Knights, of, you know, you getting to play the Bat family, Nightwing, Batgirl, and you know, Robin, and Jason Todd. Then you know, playing these characters and, you know, being able to explore Gotham, and, you know, like the idea of going with the whole Death of Batman storyline, and, you know, them having to essentially step up. And I waited a while to play that game, and I eventually played it recently on Game Pass, and I was so disappointed. And part of it was the combat was not what I wanted. I wanted something akin to the Batman Arkham games, where this combat has like a rhythm and flow to it. You know, you can do these complicated chains. You can utilize your weapons to really like move from enemy to enemy, and like that gameplay is so like addicting, and it fits so well with, you know, Batman's arsenal of gadgets and things. But Gotham Knights is not that. Gotham Knights is not that, and Gotham Knights instead is very simplified combat that doesn't feel good. And the other thing that drew a lot of people away was the, you know, the feeling of a live service aspect to it, where, you know, they want you to pay for these microtransactions, they want you to pay for these skins, they want you to, you know, get these little gadgets and things like that. And a game that really should have been focused on a single player aspect was not. And a lot of people did not like that. It got very middling reviews. Cut to Suicide Squad kills the Justice League by Rocksteady, and, you know, the original developer of the Batman Arkham games. And then the other, you know, disappointing factor about that was many people said from the get-go this shouldn't have been a live service game. Obviously, people also just didn't like the idea that the Suicide Squad is trying to kill the Justice League, especially with the fact that Suicide Squad is not the most popular DC property, nor is it like the one that people like are clamoring for. You know, for years people have wanted a Superman game, a Wonder Woman game, heck, even a Flash game, but yet what we got was a Suicide Squad game where they kill the heroes that you want to play. It didn't make sense from many multiple perspectives. But again, the game was laden with a live service model where you beat the main game and we're gonna have more content coming in. You know, there's this type of guns that you can get, and this cosmetics and these skins. And it's like, well, if the base gameplay is not fun to play, it's hard to justify it being a live service game where people are constantly coming back. And part of the fallacy is that a lot of the things that Warner Brothers Discovery, is doing is that they're trying to find essentially their cash cow. They're trying to find their Fortnite. They're trying to find their Apex Legends. They're trying to find that thing that's going to continuously pump money into the company. But the problem with that is they've proven that in their own company, it doesn't work. We look at back last year, Hogwarts Legacy. I'm not a Harry Potter fan, so never played the game, but it crossed 20 million sales last year. Over 20 million sales. It was the highest selling video game of last year, beating out Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, beating out the yearly Call of Duty. And a lot of people did not like the last Call of Duty, but it still sells. And that is an amazing feat, especially in this modern like video game industry. That is a tremendous feat. And they're intentionally moving away from that. They're like, hey, this was, you know, the biggest selling game of last year. We're not going to follow that path. We're going to double down on the Suicide Squad and the games that didn't work. And even like franchises that should be way more, celebrated for a live service model are not working, like Mortal Kombat. I'm a Mortal Kombat fan, and I didn't purchase Mortal Kombat 1. Partly because, one, it didn't even have crossplay on release, so I didn't want to get it from there. It had a terrible launch on Switch. Wasn't going to get it on Switch anyway, but that kind of shows like the higher ups emphasis. Hey, the Switch, there's a lot of people playing Switch, let's make a version for the Switch. When clearly that game shouldn't have been ran on Switch. And they still push a terrible product out, knowing that it was not representative of a good representative of that franchise. And so it's just like weird decisions like that just makes you not want to be a fan, not want to support this company. And seeing that, how they take things like that and just drive it down to the ground to franchises that should be storied and loved, and just to another way to make money. So I get it, it's a business, it's going to make money, but you don't make money by not having fans. You don't make money by not having that goodwill towards your products and having people know and trust the things that you are going to produce. The final thing is not directly related to video games, but it's something that I, am very passionate about in terms of this, subsidiary of Warner Brothers Discovery, and that's Rooster Teeth. It was just announced early in March that Rooster Teeth is shutting down after 21 years. I'm going to read a little bit from the Variety article. Rooster Teeth is biting the dust after more than 2 decades. Parent company Warner Brothers Discovery, after unsuccessful attempts to sell the unprofitable fandom, gaming, and comedy entertainment division, is shutting down Rooster Teeth's operations. Rooster Teeth General Manager Jordan Levin announced the shutdown of the Austin-based Rooster Teeth in an all-hands meeting on Wednesday in a memo distributed to staff. The closure of Rooster Teeth will result in layoffs of its approximately 150 full-time employees and will throw dozens of contractors and content creators out of work as well. Skip past a little bit. Warner Brothers Discovery is currently in talks to sell the rights to certain Rooster Teeth catalog, including Ruby, Red vs. Blue, Genlock. In addition, Warner Brothers Discovery is seeking to sell the Roost Podcast Network, which shows spanning gaming, true crime, fandom, comedy, and food, which for the time being will continue to operate. So yeah, there's a lot of sad and unfortunate with this latest news. So for one, I was a long time, I wouldn't say a long time Rooster Teeth fan, but I would say for the last 10 years, I was a Rooster Teeth fan. I remember the first time discovering Rooster Teeth. It was kind of out of nowhere. A lot of it was my high school years. I was really into Halo Reach. And some of the things that got me into Rooster Teeth was the Achievement Hunter channel, where they did guides, they did Let's Plays, they did, Halo. I remember the Halo Reach fails of the week, the gaming fails of the week. I love those videos. Rage Quit with Michael. All of the just community-driven content, and then these personalities. Rooster Teeth was the first time that I looked at internet personalities and really got hooked to them. Really got attached to what they were saying. Their personalities, their content. I really loved that, that era. And from Achievement Hunter, I started, getting into the Rooster Teeth podcast itself. And the Rooster Teeth podcast was the first time that I was like, okay, I actually like podcasts, because I didn't really, I wasn't really into the podcast space. But, that original setting for the Rooster Teeth podcast with Gus, Bernie, Barbara, and Gavin, I looked forward to the podcast every week, just to hear their stories, hear what's going on with the company, what shows they were watching, all that stuff was super, super, interesting to me. And again, me loving their personalities and the things that they were talking about and they were passionate about. And then from there, I discovered Funhouse when that started, and I actually ended up loving Funhouse way more than Rooster Teeth. That golden era of Funhouse, the first like 2 or 3 years, with the original crew there, and just the type of funny content they made, the daily uploads, and like, that dream team, it was fantastic. Um, and then, Rooster Teeth is not without controversies. There's been several controversies throughout the years regarding employee treatment. Some ways they kind of handled the COVID pandemic, where they were still trying to have the Rooster Teeth, convention still go on. And then, there were some issues in terms of quality of products of the years, or content of the years, but I still loved Rooster Teeth for what it represented. It was one of the first like big media Mongols that was internet based, with the original Red versus Blue, and it building up several different like offices and studios, and able to like eventually create motion pictures, and get into higher quality content. And through one of my favorite like media companies now is Kind of Funny, and I discovered Kind of Funny through Rooster Teeth. So it's just like the talent pool from Rooster Teeth. It's so crucial. It's such a crucial element to the internet history, and the burgeoning of an online media. And it's just so unfortunate to see that all that's just essentially being thrown down the drain. So I have no idea what's going to happen with the company, and I have no idea what's going to happen with the media. And that's the other thing, is it's like, well, if Warner Brothers Discovery is taking all of these properties from their own properties of Warner Brothers, and completely just get rid of that, what's to say is going to happen to Rooster Teeth and Funhouse and all of these other small things part of it? Once that's gone, it's going to essentially become lost media, because they've had 21 years worth of just digital media. And I have no faith that Warner Brothers is going to keep these channels up in perpetuity, to keep these these memories to live on. I just have a feeling that YouTube channel is just going to close down, all of them, because they've proven that they don't care about legacy, or they don't care about continuing one's hard work within their mediums. So I feel for all those who are affected at Rooster Teeth, and Extension, Funhouse, and all those personalities like Barbara, Gavin, James and Williams Elite, James and Elise Williams, and just the fantastic products that they built over the years that unfortunately may disappear. So yeah, that was my big rant. I really wanted to talk a lot about Rooster Teeth and how it affected me. Growing up, Achievement Hunter was my high school years, and Let's Play was my high school years. Just sitting there watching their content for hours. I'm not even a big Let's Play watcher, but the Let's Play channel and Achievement Hunter really got me into that. And throughout my college years, Funhouse and their brand of humor and things like that, and just growing up and being able to understand Gus and his stories more, him and Bernie Burns, they're like just stories as adults, and me like growing up and understanding them more and more as I get older, and the clippable parts of that that podcast. And it's just part of the reason why I just think WB has no idea what they're doing. They said, hey, we're going to try to keep the Roost podcast network. Well, part of the reason why those podcasts work is because people love the personalities. People loved seeing these projects they did in Rooster Teeth, and taking that and hearing their personal anecdotes and how the company was founded and why they did certain things that they did business wise. Like, people loved hearing about that stuff, man. And it's just unfortunate that we're going to lose a lot of that magic from there. So I'm gonna miss Rooster Teeth a whole lot. I'm gonna kind of start rewatching some of their content just to save some type of memories for them, and the impact that they had on the internet media. So don't have high hopes for Warner Brothers moving forward, but we'll see what happens. So thank you for listening. This is Bryan from Sound Test, and I will catch y'all on the next one.